You ever notice how the world seems to hum with order, even in chaos? It's like invisible lines are guiding everything, from the way we build cities to how we read a book. These lines are more than just pretty patterns, they're the foundation of grids, and they've shaped our lives in ways you might not even realize. Imagine a world without them: no sidewalks, no street signs, no way to know where you're going. It would be a maze, right? But grids don't just help us navigate, they help us think, organize, and even dream in structured ways. They're not just for roads or buildings, they're in your phone, your calendar, even your thoughts. Grids are everywhere, and they've been quietly helping us make sense of the world since ancient times. So, how did grids go from simple tools to the invisible architects of modern life? Let's take a journey through time and uncover how grids became the unsung heroes of human progress. So, what exactly are we talking about? Let's start by asking, what is a grid? It's not just lines on a page. It's a system, a structure that organizes space and time. Think of it like a city map, streets and avenues arranged in straight lines. But grids are more than that. They're the invisible framework that makes our world predictable and efficient. They're everywhere, from the layout of your kitchen to the way your phone screen is divided into sections. But grids aren't just about appearance, they're about control, logic, and order. So when we say grids became aids, we're talking about how they helped humans make sense of complexity, turn chaos into structure, and build tools that we can rely on every day. But grids didn't just help us organize space. They also helped us organize time, information, and even our thoughts. And that's where the real magic begins. You might not think about grids much, but they're everywhere: your phone, your city, even your fridge. They're the invisible structure that keeps things organized and predictable. When things are in a grid, they're easier to find, faster to use, and more efficient. Think of how quickly you can navigate a grid-based app versus a chaotic one. Even something as simple as a spreadsheet or a calendar relies on grids to keep information clear and actionable. They help us manage our time and tasks without stress. So yes, grids are invisible, but they're powerful. They make the world work better, feel more orderly, and keep us moving forward without us even realizing it. So let's fast forward to the 19th century, where the grid started to take shape as a tool for planning and organizing. It was in cities like Paris and New York that these grid systems began to appear as a response to chaos and overcrowding. Grids became the backbone of city planning, allowing for predictable movement, efficient infrastructure, and easier access to services. They brought order to the chaos of urban life, making it safer and more manageable for growing populations. But grids didn't just shape cities, they also shaped culture. They made it easier to navigate, which in turn influenced how people lived, worked, and connected with each other in urban spaces. By the early 20th century, grids had become a standard in urban planning, used in cities from Chicago to Tokyo. They were a symbol of progress, efficiency, and modernity. And as cities grew, grids evolved too. They became more flexible, adapting to new challenges like public transit, green spaces, and even digital networks. But the core idea remained: control through structure. So, from chaos to control, grids transformed the way we live in cities. And while they might seem rigid, they've also allowed for creativity, growth, and a sense of place in the urban jungle. Imagine you're building a Lego castle. You need everything in the right place, right? That's what grids do. They help things line up perfectly. Without grids, your blocks might fall or look messy. Grids are like invisible lines that make everything fit together nicely. They're not just for Lego or puzzles, they help us build cities, design apps, and even play games without everything getting mixed up. So grids are like the invisible helpers that make sure everything stays in its right place, just like how you keep your toys in order. They're everywhere, even if you don't see them. Next time you see a puzzle, a city, or a phone screen, remember grids are helping everything fit together. So let's start by imagining a blank canvas, like a digital world waiting to be shaped. This is where everything begins, and it's all about setting the stage for the grid to do its magic. Now, we introduce the grid-like invisible lines that guide everything. These lines are like the skeleton of the design, invisible but essential, helping to keep things aligned and organized. But how do we control this grid? We use a tool called the grid settings. It's like a control panel that lets us choose the spacing, the color, and even whether the grid shows up on top or behind the design. Once we're happy with the settings, we hit apply and suddenly, the grid is there, ready to help us build something precise and beautiful. It's like the first step in a puzzle, setting up the foundation for everything that comes next. With the grid in place, we're no longer just creating, we're designing with confidence, knowing that every element we add will align perfectly with the structure beneath. Now we're getting to the real magic: how grids actually help us. Think of them like invisible scaffolding, holding everything together so we can build on top of it without falling apart. These grids aren't just lines on a page, they're rules. They define where things go, how they align, and even how they move. It's like having a map that tells you exactly where to place each piece. And here's the best part, grids don't just help you create, they help you think. They encourage precision, clarity, and a sense of order that makes your work feel more professional and polished. So next time you see a grid, remember it's not just a tool, it's a way of thinking, a framework for creativity, and a silent helper that makes your work shine. Now comes the clever twist that makes grids more than just lines on a page. It's not just about organizing, but about enabling something unexpected: flexibility. This twist allows grids to adapt. They can shift, rotate, or even change size, all while keeping their structure intact. It's like a puzzle that can rearrange itself without losing its shape. This flexibility is key. It means grids are rigid anymore, they can respond to changing needs, whether it's in design, data, or even in how we organize our thoughts. The twist isn't just visual, it's functional. It allows grids to be both precise and adaptable, making them a powerful tool in the hands of creators and thinkers. This is the clever twist, not just a tool, but a bridge between structure and creativity. It's what makes grids more than just grids, they become aids. At the heart of every grid is a hidden rhythm, a kind of invisible pulse that keeps everything in sync. This pulse is made of waves of electricity, moving like a heartbeat through the wires. These waves are actually tiny particles of energy called electrons, zipping through wires at nearly the speed of light. They're like tiny, invisible messengers carrying power from power plants to your home. When you flip a switch, you're not starting a new flow of power. You're simply opening a door that lets this existing flow reach your light bulb or your computer. This flow is controlled by something called voltage, which is like the pressure that pushes the electrons through the wires. Without the right voltage, your devices wouldn't work. And just like a well-tuned orchestra, all these electrical components, wires, transformers, and circuits work together in harmony to keep the grid running smoothly. Imagine a city where every building is a puzzle piece and the streets are the lines that connect them. Grids are like that city's blueprint, ensuring everything fits perfectly. Now picture that city without a grid, buildings scattered like confetti and no clear path to anywhere. That's chaos, and grids are the antidote. So, grids are like invisible glue that holds everything together. They make the city readable, navigable, and safe for everyone to enjoy. But here's the twist: grids are more than just lines on a map. They're a language, a code, a way to make the world make sense. And that's why grids are not just tools, they're the silent architects of our world, shaping the way we live, move, and connect. You might be thinking, how could a grid be a help? It sounds too perfect. But here's the twist. Grids aren't just about structure. They're about making the invisible visible, turning chaos into clarity. Imagine trying to navigate a city where every street goes in a different direction. It's confusing, right? Now imagine that same city, but with a grid north-south and east-west. Suddenly, everything makes sense. But grids do more than just help you get around. They help you organize space, plan cities, and even design everything from websites to game levels. It's like a blueprint for order in a world full of randomness. Quick word from our sponsor. If this sounds like something you'd enjoy, take a look at the Kindle Paperwhite e-reader. There's a link and a QR code on screen right now, and in the description below. Alright, back to it. So next time you see a grid, remember it's not just lines on a page. It's a tool that turns confusion into clarity and chaos into control. And that's why grids became aids. Myth number 1 is that grids were just for math class. But guess what? They've been helping us make sense of the world way beyond numbers. In fact, grids are like invisible ladders that help us organize time, space, and even our thoughts. They're everywhere, you just didn't realize it. So the next time you see a grid, don't just think of numbers. Think of the invisible structure that's helping shape your world. That's why busting this myth is key, because grids are more than just tools. They're the hidden architects of our modern lives. Myth number 2 is that grids are rigid and limit creativity. But wait, grids actually give artists freedom by providing a structure to build on. Imagine trying to draw a perfect square without a grid. It's like trying to dance without a rhythm, chaotic, but maybe not as precise. In fact, grids can help you push your creativity further by giving you a foundation to experiment and innovate on. So, next time you see a grid, don't think of it as a cage, think of it as a canvas waiting for your creativity to shine. You might not realize it, but grids are hiding in your morning coffee. From the perfectly aligned steam rising to the geometric pattern of the cup's handle, they're everywhere you look. Even your phone screen is a grid, rows and columns that organize your photos, messages, and apps. It's not just pretty, it's practical. Your favorite book? The pages are a grid of text, each line a horizontal row, each letter a tiny square in a bigger system of order. Even your kitchen is full of grids, the tiles on the floor, the arrangement of your fridge, the layout of your countertop. They make everything functional and beautiful. Grids are more than just lines and boxes. They're the invisible structure that organizes your world, making it easier to navigate, understand, and enjoy. Let me take you to a real-world example where grids went surprisingly hard. Imagine a city where everything is laid out in perfect rows and columns, and yet it's still chaotic. This city is New York, and while it's mostly grid-based, it's not as orderly as you'd expect. The grid helps with navigation, but it also creates unexpected bottlenecks and congestion. The grid is the foundation, but the real challenge is how people interact with it. It's not just about the streets, it's about the people, the culture, and the history that shapes how they use the space. So, even though grids are supposed to make things easier, they can also create complexity. It's a reminder that structure alone doesn't solve everything, it's how we use it that matters. And that's why grids became aids. They help, but they don't always make things simple. They're tools, not magic wands. And that's what makes them so interesting. We're talking about the point where grids weren't just helpful anymore, they were breaking records, pushing boundaries, and turning into something almost like magic. Imagine a grid that's not just structured, it's cranked up to 11, with each line vibrating with energy, as if it's alive and ready to explode. In this extreme, grids are no longer just organizing information, they're shaping it, creating it, and even breaking the rules of what we think is possible. It's like watching a child with a crayon and a blank page, but instead of drawing, they're building the future with lines that defy logic and gravity. When a grid fails, the consequences can be catastrophic. A single point of failure can bring down entire systems, causing chaos in cities and industries alike. Imagine a power plant that relies on a single, outdated transformer. If it fails, it can trigger a cascade of failures that shut down everything from hospitals to subways. Sometimes, the failure isn't just technical, it's also human. Errors, miscommunication, or even sabotage can lead to grid collapses that are hard to recover from. Rebuilding after a grid failure takes time, resources, and resilience. It's a reminder that even the most advanced systems are only as strong as their weakest link. You never see the downsides on the brochure, but grids have hidden costs. They can lock you into rigid layouts and limit creative freedom. It's like choosing a path with no exits. Grids often force you into a one-size-fits-all design, which can make your work feel stale. You're not exploring new ideas, you're just filling in the blanks. When you use a grid, you're trading flexibility for structure. It's like wearing a suit that's too tight, you can't move freely, and it starts to feel restrictive. Grids can also make your work feel predictable. The audience starts to expect what's coming next, and the surprise is lost. It's like a story with no twists. So, while grids are useful, they're not the whole story. They're tools, not magic wands. You have to be aware of the trade-offs and choose wisely. So, how did humans even figure out that grids could be useful? It started with the simplest of observations, like how honeybees build their hives. They saw patterns in nature, and then they started thinking about how to replicate that in their own lives, like building walls or organizing space. It wasn't just about walls. Think about how we've used grids in everything from maps to music, even in the way we count and measure. The key was realizing that regular patterns could help us solve problems like how to fit more stuff into a space or how to make things look balanced. So, it wasn't magic. It was just smart observation and a little bit of curiosity. And that's how grids became aids. There's a place where grids are not just tools, but a way of life. It's not a city, not a country, but a town called Gridville where everything is perfectly aligned, even the sidewalks. The people of Gridville don't just use grids, they live by them. Every home has a grid on the wall, and every kid learns to draw grids before they learn to write. But the weirdest part, the town has a grid that doesn't follow any rules. It's a chaotic grid where lines cross and overlap, creating a kind of grid that's more like a maze than a map. They call it the grid of confusion, and it's the only place in town where you can get lost by following the grid. It's a kind of grid that's more art than logic. So, in Gridville, grids are both a tool and a test, a rule and a rebellion. And it's a reminder that sometimes the weirdest edge cases are the ones that make grids truly fascinating. What if we didn't just use grids to organize things, but to control how people think? Imagine a world where every decision, every piece of information, is filtered through a grid that shapes what we see. This isn't just about structure, it's about influence. Grids can guide us, but they can also limit us. What if we use them not to help, but to hide, to distort reality in ways we can't even see? What if grids became tools of propaganda, not just playing? They could be used to shape opinions, control narratives, and even manipulate behavior without anyone realizing it. This is the dark side of grids, where the same tools that help us build can also be used to control. But understanding that possibility is the first step to using grids responsibly. So, what happens when we stop seeing grids as just tools and start seeing them as power? That's the real question, and it's one we should never ignore. Imagine a city without streets, just a bunch of buildings haphazardly placed. It would be confusing, hard to find your way around, and hard to deliver mail or supplies. Now, imagine that same city, but with a grid layout. Streets run straight, blocks are uniform, and you can predict where you're going just by counting steps. Like a spreadsheet, a grid organizes information so you can easily find what you need without getting lost in the details. So, when you see a grid, you're not just seeing lines and blocks, you're seeing a system that makes life easier, faster, and more intuitive. Whether it's in a city, a spreadsheet, or even a game board, grids are more than just lines. They're the invisible scaffolding that helps us navigate the world. Before you go, if you enjoyed this, please give it a like and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And tell us in the comments what you'd like us to make next. We read every single one. Thank you so much for watching. Comment this emoji if you made it to the end.